Now, let us continue right away with Sascha Pfeiffer, but before that, I introduce a toy. I need you to play with me. You don't lose money and you don't, you don't need to download an app, and we're not going to spy on your phone. It's just a toy that shows you what everyone is interested in. Please take out your phone, put that paper away. That's last century. Take out your phone and go to a browser, go to voxr.org/expert. And there you have a window where you can punch in a keyword or a sentence of something that interests you most. And then we'll go to the next picture and see a cloud of words that is actually developing. voxr.org, and now I change the screen. Let's see whether I managed to. Now we see the cloud. CRM has become was bigger before. There was even patents very big this morning when we were talking about that. And as we continue, the keywords change, and this is what you see, what people have been interested in and are interested right now. And as you punch in new words, you see this cloud of words. It's a very, very nice little toy that shows us, reflects on what the crowd thinks. Sascha Pfeiffer is Director of Sales and Engineering with Sophos. As the information security industry matures, we have to accept that there is no such thing as perfect prevention. Up to now, we assemble best-of-breed network and endpoint components to provide some reasonable measure of defense in depth, but we need a game changer. Synchronized security is enabling meaningful and contextual exchange of information. This is what Sascha Pfeiffer is going to talk about. Synchronized security, time for a change in paradigms in the IT security. Please welcome Sascha Pfeiffer. Sein Bild.
Here we go. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Before we go into what synchronized security is actually about, I will talk a little about why we have to invent new things to combat threats. So you see some numbers here on the screen that reflect something that companies like Sophos and their peers in defending the criminal industry see every day. So there's a lot of criminal energy that we have to counter, and you see very large numbers, right? So there's days when we get like 500,000 new samples of individual malware per day, right? What does that mean? So this is unique attacks against companies or individuals, right? So that's a very, very huge number. And obviously, we don't have 500,000 people in the company we wish, but to combat these, so we have to come up with some more intelligent ways to conquer. I give you some, not a history lesson, but things like in fashion, things happen over and over and over again, right? So currently, you see something we call in the industry Cryptolockers, right? Famous names like CryptoWall or Tesla or Locky, right? Currently happening in your home, in your company. And not a lot of people know ransomware, so taking someone hostage for money or something hostage for money, is something that happened already 27 years ago, right? So it's not new. And at that time, you see some stats here. You had to pay a very small amount, something around $200 to get the decryption codes for the encrypted data. So for those of you who do not know what ransomware is, so basically you get lured onto downloading something or installing something or at least run something on your computer, which basically then looks for the directory where you typically keep documents, right? Like your personal CV, your bank account stats, if you have to take care of that, or other things that belong to you. That's personal information, valuable information to you. In companies, that's typically folders where you store your Excel spreadsheets, your Word documents, PDF, code, source code, if it really goes wrong, and other valuable data. So basically the PII, what we call. Now, these ransomware tools will do the following. Once running on your computer, they will encrypt the data with a key only the cyber criminal holds. It will ask for the ransom payment, in that case here, around $200, and it will hand you the decryption key, right? Very simple. In '98, that was obviously a little more complicated, as the internet was not the internet we use today. There was no such thing as a smartphone, right? No tablet PCs. The computers were like this size. You probably had a screen like this, but with a resolution a lot lower. Now, there were some things in the meantime to lure people into download something, right? So over time, antivirus became prevalent. So people got used to the idea, okay, if there's people doing bad stuff to my PC, I install something that prevents that something breaks out on my PC and does something stupid with it, right? Now, the cybercriminals also took advantage over this. What you see here is a screenshot of what the industry calls fake antivirus. So you think you download something good that keeps your PC clean, but in fact, it's just a fake and installing malware on your PC. So fake antivirus is basically malware that does something to your PC. And in a case of ransomware, it will install cryptography on your computer, encrypt all your personal files, and take you hostage, right? And depending of the way that works, and you see here different versions of that, and you see there's a pattern here. The ransom money is not that high, right? So you see some samples here always around $50, $100, $200. So there's a certain expectation that you will pay, right? And that's the very important factor in that game, right? So when we think about that fake antivirus sample, right, they will lure you in with something like $19, right, or euros. So it's a very low number. So people don't think, okay, I'll better pay that low amount and get my PC back, right? My property back. And now also for companies, numbers like $500 or $5,000 are not the amount that they will think of. Okay, I better not pay. I try to circumvent this, right? But the cryptography that the cyber criminals use is actually, a good grade. I mean, that's perfect cryptography. That means you cannot decrypt that even by brute forcing, right? There is no other way than either paying or you have a backup. Now, at home, not an awful lot of people take backups, right? Regularly. You probably do that once a year if you're lucky, right? And if you have created a document or start writing a book or something and lose this data, you probably better pay than fine. And that's the same for companies, right? Nowadays, organizations tend to get very sloppy if they're not directly involved with IT. If IT is just something they use and is not the core of the foundation of the company, then things like backup get forgotten, right? And the cyber criminals around ransomware take total advantage of. They know that you're sloppy with IT and security measures, yeah, good passwords and all that. So Cryptolocker is something that happened or started with that term as a tool in around 2013, so roughly 3 years ago, right? And you see the gang that was busted eventually not only showed that this technology, by handing out Word documents with macroviruses in it, right, that works on a mass scale, but also the astonishing amount. So the assumption from the US Department of Justice here in that sample is they earned something like $27 million just asking a relatively low amount of money. So it's actually a good business, right? So what they also did is they hired experts in several areas, right? So typically, cyber criminals sending out emails asking you for starting bad software, they typically have very bad English or local language, like sending out German letters and emails with errors in it all the way through. But the recent viruses we saw and we currently see, like Locky, is an absolute perfect example. There's almost no error. So the cyber criminals must have hired proper translation services to make sure that these letters arrive at people's desk, not thinking that could be fake already because the language in it is so bad, right? And it's totally internationalized. So in Poland, someone would get a perfect Polish letter, right, saying something to lure the guy in to open that Word document, right? And if there's some really, really nice examples when you always get away into a company, for instance, right? So if you go to the HR department, right? So HR departments take care of hiring new people, new talent. So in an HR department, a person would always open up a PDF document if it says, hey, I'm applying for a job in your company, and attached you find my CV. So anyone in HR would always open that CV, being interested, who's that person, right? So a very easy way in, very easy way. People in HR probably will not think of, oh, that might be malware, right? That's a very easy way into a company. Or what commonly happens, financial departments, they get a bill, right? Sometimes bills are sent in a format of a Word document, not even a PDF, but a Word document containing the bill details. And people in finance are also not IT experts. They do not know the difference between a malware attack with a macro virus and the contents of a bill. So in order to understand, is that a bill for my department, for my special branch of that finance department, or is that from a colleague to just shovel the data and the workload away, they will open up the document and it will say something like, please run the macro here to help you to recalculate the numbers. They will not think, click on the button and activate the download of the virus, right? This is a very, and to be honest, we had that word macro virus thing already happening 10 years ago. So why is that happening again, right? We've asked a lot of our customers, so why do you even start accepting documents that contain macros at all? And they say, well, our IT departments are very small, right? There's no dedicated security people. And our line of business, we have special needs, like special calculations. We cannot ask IT to help with these calculations, so we've built our own tools. So a lot of business branches inside a company start creating macros in Excel spreadsheets to calculate stuff where they, in normal times, would buy software for it, right? So it's a workaround, basically. And all their delivery chain will use the same workarounds. So there's a whole ecosystem of exchanging workarounds. So all the companies start to be open to what's now happening, to just sending around macros, right? And all these vendors in that space, and you see here another example. And again, you see a low amount, $300 or 300 euros, right? So people see, okay, I'd rather pay and get away with it. Now, in the past, with a ransomware, you would actually not get a decryption key, right? Stupid. You paid something, you will not get something in return. Now, the cybercriminal industry has changed a lot. And all of this, they have a certain, if you can say so, they have a certain code of ethic. Right? Their ethic is they will actually hand you the key to make sure that this is going to work in the future. Right? You see the large amount, like the one gang that eventually got busted with $27 million. That's a lot, right? That was just a few people. And this is a lot more than others would earn with proper work, right? Now, I've listed here some of the names you've probably seen actually in the news. Sometimes early news magazines, 6 o'clock in the morning, discuss Tesla and Cryptolocker, right? So it's right in the homes of people to make them understand. And unfortunately, what the news agency said is don't pay. Which is crazy because now you're in a trap, right? You probably got sloppy with your IT. You don't have a backup. And a lot of a lot of companies we see in that space who got eventually caught by that virus, they don't have backup, or at least recent backups. So now they're in a trap. Either I lose data, and I actually don't know what kind of data I've lost because I cannot compare it anymore. Right? I don't know what version of that documents I have here because it's encrypted, and the version I have in a backup is probably, I don't know, 100 years old, right? And I don't see the delta, I don't see the difference. So if it says 300, who cares? I'll pay, right, to get my data back. And now the ethics of the cyber criminals is actually, they will hand you the key to make sure that you don't spread the word, I've paid and I didn't get anything. Because the word is now between the companies, pay and you will get it, so don't you worry, right? And as the amount is low enough to not think about it, the cyber criminals will act on it, right? So you see there's a snapshot of things that happen, and you see a lot of strange document types that will be sent. But these make sense if you think of companies that do computer-aided design, right? Where the core of the business is the value in the design, so the CAD documents, right? And they will really make sure that if that is encrypted, that data, that will get it back, because for sure there's no backup on this. So, as I said, the most current way to infect is to lure people in with macro files, because everyone knows in the cyber criminal space they will open that anyways, right? We had something happening in our own company where the copy machine pretend to send something, right? Obviously it was an email from external, but it says copier at sophos.com, and there is an attached document. And somebody who is not known with the processes inside the company that the copy machine will not send document by itself in email, because it will rather send you probably an email saying, on the filer, also on the file server somewhere, there's your scan waiting or your fax waiting. You will never directly send. But people who are not used to that kind of process or new to the company, they're sure, the fax machine will send me the fax that I just wait for. Probably I did. I don't know. Right? I'll open up and see. And this is the easiest way in, right? And think of all your smartphones, right? All the attempts from somebody you eventually know by name. Will you look into the proper email? Because you actually have to click somewhere or press your screen to understand, is the person's name equal to the person's email address, right? In the moment, there are these, you've won €500 or dollar things happening in Europe a lot, right? You're grinning. You get them like every minute or so, right? But if they're really good, right? Like if there's something waiting for you, which you're actually waiting, right? You open it instead of just, hey, hang on a second. Why do they know my private email or my company email address, right? So investigating by just one simple button. That's a dodgy email address. That's not even the person's name in the email address. So I'll dump it, right? But that's the education that most companies, and obviously in private also, people are missing. The whole breakout with ransomware is a really bad example of non-education in companies, right? People rather spend money on countermeasures, technology, rather than giving advice to the employees on how to counter this, right? Also as an advice for their private life. Because what you do today is you have your smartphone that carries half of your personal belongings, family photos, private emails, copies of your OneDrive, Google Drive, Dropbox, Box.com, whatever, right? Terabytes on your phone, if it can carry that, and company email, company data, company documents, all mixed in one place, right? So the advice that companies could give to their employees is not only valuable for the employee person, but also for the private part, all in one place, right? And obviously the most common infection method is still people being very nosy, right? We had years and years and years of malware authors sending you FedEx, DHL, whatever, there's a delivery waiting for you in the next pickup station. Hey, I didn't order anything, but I'll look into it. Maybe something somebody else forgot, and I'll take it, I'll collect it. So people being nosy always works, right? What changed is the quality, right? So cyber criminals are not the guys in the garage anymore. They're actually a company. They're a proper company. They know if I want to do something in Germany, I have to speak proper German, right? I have to do that in a proper way without errors to lure people in. And the funny thing, that alone works already, right? And a bit of context. So how does ransomware happen on your machine? So in essence, it's important, obviously, that there's some sort of installation on your PC that eventually will even survive a reboot, right? Okay, technology. Then the ransomware will actually contact its main server, and this is to exchange key material. As I said, it will not encrypt something on your machine, ask you for money, and give you nothing in return. So from a technology perspective, that's actually very well engineered, right? So there's good cryptography involved, so it will get the private key, download it on the machine, actually execute the encryption process, and then the extortion starts, right? Now, the good thing for us with countermeasures is we can intercept, for instance, stage 2, contacting headquarters. If we understand from enough malware samples that this is a common server where this database of encryption keys sits, we can block the traffic and lock out the whole process. So if we manage to get in at stage 2, stage 4 will not happen, therefore you're safe, right? But again, that's technology versus education in your company. Now, initially we said something about synchronized security, and this is kind of our idea on how we counter this, right? In every company, and probably in every home, there's something like a firewall. At home, you will not necessarily call it firewall. It's a DSL router. But in essence, it's some sort of firewall. And almost everyone, runs antivirus on their machines. Yeah? If you're clever enough, you do that on your smartphone as well, if the manufacturer allows this. But these are two very individual pieces of security, right? A firewall tries to block traffic, typically inbound, and your antivirus tries to prevent something from happening on your machine. We think now it's time that these two very different pieces of technology should work together. I give you a different example from a nightclub, right? So if you go to a nightclub, there's a bouncer, right? A person that looks at you is like, do you think you have money? Okay, if you have money, you probably can come in even if you look dodgy, right? But if you have a knife here or something, he will try to block you from entering the nightclub. Now, some bigger nightclubs also have someone watching in the inside. So if the bouncer outside lets someone in that behaves strange, he tries to move them out. Now, synchronized security is a way of giving both some sort of walkie-talkie, right? So the bouncer outside was like, dude, I will let somebody in. He probably has a lot of money, but he can cause trouble, right? So make sure you watch him, and if he behaves badly, kick him out right away, right? So that's the sort of communication we've implemented here with what we call synchronized security. So that's what we think is a paradigm shift, because the firewall can now make sure that if we see that key exchange happening from stage 2, if you remember the slide before, if that's blocked, then encryption will never happen, right? Or if something has broken out on one of the machines, the firewall will get notified and say, okay, please block traffic from everything else looking exactly like this. So you only have to take care of one machine, right? So this is our assumption on how we can counter the next waves. Because don't you think ransomware will stop? We're just in the middle of it, because it continues to work for a long time, right? So you will see a next wave if countermeasures will not be able to check in macro viruses. If the cyber criminals, for instance, send out password-protected zip files, right? So if I will send you a password-protected zip file, but the text in it says, oh, just for security reason, I zipped it, and I set a password for it, and the password is, then nothing can, in an automated fashion, look into that word macro and check, oh, it's malware, I'll dump it, right? So we'll pass the firewall or your email security system very easily, right? So you will see new ways where cyber criminals, because they earn a lot of money, and don't forget, they are like a company, right? They're not stupid. They will try to find new methods that you eventually will run that piece of software, right? And now the other piece where we think, and a lot of players in the industry will think that we can still have some sort of last line of defense, is something we call sandboxing, right? So, as an example, if you are in an airport, and in the airport there's a lost baggage somewhere in the middle of nowhere, right, with no one around it, the security people in the airport get really nervous, right? And eventually, what they do is they will screw like a dome over that luggage and detonate it, just in case, to make sure that if there was some sort of explosive in there, they will not harm anything, right? And this is what we do with sandboxing, right? Sandboxing is basically just a bunch of virtual computers, different configurations, different platforms, Windows, Mac, and so on and so forth, different software loaded, and we try to detonate the software what we potentially think is malware, right? So it's a very good technology. Obviously, it's a bit more costly, nothing for private use. But for companies, some sort of last line defense if nothing works. But essentially, what we try to educate our partners and customers with is that the current breakout of ransomware is best countered with education, right? Because, as I said in the sample, you get an email with that you won €500, right? There's 2 easy checks. What's the real email address, right? Amazon online dash .org. No, Amazon does not have that web address, right? It's a very easy check that you could do to just simply verify the dodgy sender in that case, right? But don't you wait for spell errors or something in the emails, because that's not going to happen anymore, right? They will make it a lot harder to identify. And so education does not stop here. We try to educate you for 20 years. Don't use moon123 as password, right? So far it worked well. Now we probably have to educate you on how to identify bad emails coming your way, right? I think that's about it. If there's questions,
2 minutes.
Happy to answer them.
Yes, great. Moon123. Yeah, that's creative.
Actually,
That's a riddle.
Sun123 was the most favorite password last year, right?
It was?
It was.
Hell. Okay. Questions, things you'd like to know, thinking of your own business.
There is a question.
Where? There, okay. Here you go.
Thank you. What protection can there be if what I've seen in our own email traffic is when someone really also spoofs the email address, or even tries to, what I've also seen in our own email traffic, tries to spoof the ESMT banner of a outgoing server, mimicking your company's domain.
Yeah, that's actually a very common attack we see coming our way. So it's then obviously not easy by the receiver to simply identify this is a bad email coming from a bad source, and then you actually have to apply, because technology, from a technology point of view, that's a real challenge, right? If something looks like if it's real, then education is your primary weapon, actually, right? If you get something from DHL but you never ordered something, so what's the point in opening up, right? There are some hardcore technology measures to find spoofed message. It's called bounce address tag verification. From a technology point of view, who would counter that? Visit the Sophos website or Sophos stand here, and I will tell you more about BAT-V. But again, technology is only as good as you implement, and obviously you didn't implement bounce address tag verification to counter that attack.
Thank you very much, Sascha Pfeiffer. That was news to use.